If we look deeper into the methods of spreading propaganda, we can see that Russian state-financed TV channels are one of the main tools for doing this.
They're advancing narratives to stir up Russian population to action and encourage the commission of the war crimes.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course, and I'm your host, Miroslava Yaremkiv. Not all crimes are committed on the battlefield. Some are carried out thousands of miles away. This includes one of the most serious international crimes, incitement to genocide. Russian media was flooded with hate speech against Ukrainians long before full-scale invasion, but the rhetoric had significantly worsened. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a strong case to be made and bringing charges against Russian propagandists for direct and public incitement to genocide. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. Not every message that incites hatred and murder constitutes a criminal offense under international law. In order to collect evidence and prove guilt, it is necessary to analyze statements according to very clear indicators. One of the signs of genocidal rhetoric is the use of euphemisms by Russian propaganda. For example, they call Ukrainians Nazis, Banderovites, Ukro-Nazis, Satanists, etc. The war is called special military operation. The beginning of a full-scale invasion is forced measure. The forced deportation of Ukrainians is called evacuation, and the abduction of Ukrainian children a trip to kids' camps for health improvement. Media and digital rights lawyer at Digital Security Lab Ukraine, Maksym Dvorovyi, will talk about judicial basis in terms of international law to hold Russian propagandists accountable for their war crimes.
We mostly talk about Russian propagandists being held criminally liable both nationally and internationally, and there is a solid body of law for this, including the Rome Statute and other norms of international criminal law, including the practice of the previous tribunals, such as the Nuremberg Tribunal, the Tokyo Tribunal, and ICTR and ICTY. However, the more overlooked topic is holding Russia as a state liable for the activities of its propagandists. If we look deeper into the methods of spreading propaganda, we can see that Russian state-financed TV channels are one of the main tools for doing this. And for this, for being state-financed, they fall within the attribution under the so-called Articles on International Responsibility of States for Internationally Wrongful Acts. Because under those rules, which are considered as being the norms of customary international law, if a certain entity is being financed by the state, then its actions may be attributed to the state in terms of state responsibility and state liability for violating international law. Thus, we can have a look at what the Первый channel or Russia or RTR Planeta or Россия TV or whatever all those TV channels are being called. They are all frequently engaged in violating the norms of international law. A number of norms come into play for this. One of the most dominant of them being Article 20 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which prohibits propaganda for war and hate speech. Another prominent instrument is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, which also prohibits incitements to hatred based on ethnic origin. And we can find even more norms of international law which are being breached by Russia. Of course, these norms are much harder to be enforced on an international scale because the jurisdiction of international courts is based on the consent, and there are not a lot of areas where Russia had given its consent to be sued in these courts. But there are still some instruments left by Ukraine and not used by Ukraine to do so. So, in my opinion, to kind of do the job properly and do its homework properly, Ukraine has to continue pursuing those international fora where Russians can be prosecuted, or not Russia, but Russia as a state should not be prosecuted, but Russia as a state can be found as being in breach of its violations under international law. And some of these forums are still available. So I would be happy to see the following lawsuits both in the International Court of Justice, the Human Rights Committee, and there is some basis for that. An additional point I forgot to mention, and which is also a significant basis for holding Russia liable for violations of international law, is the potential breach of the Genocide Convention, because the Genocide Convention itself prohibits incitements to genocide. And again, if we look into the broadcasts of Solovyov, Skabeyeva, Kiselov, and other state-affiliated Russian so-called journalists, we can clearly identify that what they are spreading reminiscences of the incitements to genocide, which is strictly prohibited under international law. For sure, it will be hard to prove because the standard of proof is quite high for genocide-related cases, but I do think it might be possible in the future.
This architecture of propaganda is not new. Hate speech has been an intrinsic part of the process to inflict inconceivable cruelty on millions of innocents on many previous occasions. It was an integral part of the tools used during the Holocaust, the war in the former Yugoslavia, and in Rwanda. The Rwandan case provides examples of how propagandists can create a such special state of mind with techniques as dehumanization and blurring the boundaries between combatants and civilians. Russian manipulation has been both historical, denying the right of the Ukrainian nation to exist, and religious, by portraying this war as a sacred duty. Tetiana Avdeeva, lawyer at Digital Security Lab Ukraine and member of the Independent Media Council, will delve into more historical examples of propaganda being recognized as a crime against humanity and peace and led to just legal repercussions.
It is indeed important to bring Russia to liability as a state and ensure that proper reparations are paid by it as a legal entity for all the damage which is done in Ukrainian territories. For example, that restitution is done regarding the cultural heritage which has been illegally taken from Ukrainian territories to Moscow and other regions, that reparations are paid for the damaged civilian infrastructure and to the civilians who actually suffered from Russian illegal aggression. But apart from the state responsibility and dimension of reparations, there is another important issue, namely individual criminal liability of those responsible for commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and alleged genocide in Ukrainian territories. In this respect, there have been numerous examples when individuals have been brought to justice, not only for the commission of certain crimes which are outlawed by the Rome Statute and other statutes of international criminal tribunals, but also when individuals who stirred up such actions or served as a propagandists of the illegal culture and illegal notions have been brought to liability. One of the most famous and one of the oldest cases in this respect has been the case of Julius Streicher, who has been prosecuted during Nuremberg trials following the end of the Second World War. This person, among other actions, has been prosecuted directly for stirring up the commission of war crimes and crimes of aggression. In this respect, he directly coordinated the media activities and in different capacities has been involved in the media propagandistic campaigns of the Nazi connotations. Another quite more recent example was the case before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which has been established to review the genocidal activities which has been conducted in Rwandan territory. In this respect, there was a special case. It was directly called the media case. When 4 individuals who operated the radio facilities use those facilities to distribute the propaganda for commission of crimes against humanity as well as incitement to genocide in the territory of Rwanda. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda directly stated that incitement to genocide is one of the most gravest crimes and is directly the part of the genocidal activities, and therefore those individuals have been brought to justice. In the present case, when we can observe the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, there is also the case that the war has not only the physical actions which are done in the field, namely rape, destruction of civilian facilities, also mass murders, and other types of physical crimes. There is also the problem that the precondition and fertile ground for commission of such crimes implies the presence of the propagandistic element. Namely, they are trying to manipulate by the legal concepts in order to justify their illegal invasion. They're advancing narratives to stir up Russian population to action and encourage them commission of the war crimes. Only a couple of examples can be said about drowning of children in the rivers, which have been promulgated on the Russian media infrastructure for quite some time. These and many more other examples serve as a perfect exemplification of how information resources are used as a tool for conducting warfare, and therefore those individuals have to be brought to justice. There are two main venues how it can be done. First of all, the International Criminal Court, which currently reviews the war crimes which are committed in the territory of Ukraine from 2014, where also the propaganda for commission of such crimes is the mode of liability, namely those who instigate commission of war crimes can be brought to justice. And another potential venue is creation of the Special Criminal Tribunal, where in the statute of the tribunal it can be directly prescribed that propaganda for war crimes, incitement to war crimes, incitement to crimes against humanity, along with the classic example of incitement to genocide, can be easily prosecuted by the future criminal tribunal and responsible individuals will be brought to justice. And it is necessary to consider while creating this tribunal because this war, comparing to all the other armed conflicts, is absolutely different and is highly motivated and based on information warfare as well, and therefore it has to be part of the justice process in order to ensure that similar activities are not done in the future and that responsible individuals are brought to justice.
You've been watching a special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!